Forrest Nash, a local late-night live radio talk show host of the not-so-popular and fun Scream radio station, starts yet another slow and boring night at 189.16, being accompanied by his energetic producer, Piggy, being on the other side of the glass. Gallows Creek, a quiet town with not much usually happening, is to become the leading breaking news as a deranged convicted killer is soon to appear, putting the lives of many unsuspecting civilians at risk. By the looks of it, it appears the story takes place in the 1980s, as the technology in the studio resonates with that time period, and also with some other later hints. Receiving the first call from the guest, someone by the name of Leslie Harper explains that she is a 911 operator and police dispatcher for the local town, who is calling to get some sort of help as she found the lifeless body of Sheriff Matthews in his office, going there after multiple failed tries of reaching him. Leslie seemingly received many 911 calls with distressed callers, but as she tried to connect to the sheriff and failed, she went there to discover the horrifying reason he wasn't responding. The Deputy Martinez has better luck, however, as she is found unconscious, being locked in a holding cell, which leaves the town unprotected. Sheriff Matthews seemed to have fought for his life, with many bullet casings found around him, but unfortunately, he succumbs to the brutality of the killer. Unfortunately, this town seems to have only 3 officers, with the third one being on leave to Cancun, with any backup taking at least a few hours before showing up. Leslie tried to reach these other departments, which are the closest to the town, but for some mysterious reason, the lines seem to be locked, allowing only local calls. Leslie mentions she has directed all the 911 calls to come straight to the radio station, so Forrest can talk to them and help them out, as Leslie is on her way to the closest departments to get help and backup, which would mean she wouldn't be able to respond to any calls. Leslie does a quick mock call, preparing Forrest for any future calls. Forrest helps Leslie find a set of keys to the cell to free Officer Martinez, but as she tries to wake her get up, she sees her car go up in flames, with someone blowing it up.
My car! My car is on fire!
What do you mean it's on fire?
How the hell? Did it just go up in smoke? What happened?
Wait. What? No way. This can't... Oh, Forrest, we have big trouble.
What's happening? What's that noise? It sounds like whistling?
Whistling? It can't be.
Oh my god. I can see him, but he's dead, right? Right? But that mask, how the hell is he...
That's when faint whistling sounds are heard, with Leslie trembling in fear, saying that it's the Whistling Man, a notorious serial killer from the 1950s who shocked the town, someone who was claimed and reported to be dead, with his case closing. As the killer tries to break into the office and kill Leslie and finish off Martinez, she can't think this through under immense stress, with Forrest doing his best to assist Leslie find a way out of this life or death conundrum. Leslie manages to take the unconscious body of Martinez with her, and after a struggle with the killer, get into a working car and drive off safely. Happy they are safe, Piggy and Forrest ask how long it'll be before they can expect any backup, to which Leslie answers it could be up to 6 hours, as each way could take 2 to 3 hours each. All of this is being broadcasted live, with people calls also being directed to the station. Meanwhile, before the next call, Piggy explains that the Whistling Man was a serial killer in the 50s by the name of Edward Marshall Mooney, who wore a freaky mask who reigned terror in the local town of Gallows Creek, with his motives of killing being unknown. They go over some theories to whether this deranged killer is a copycat or the actual killer, but they can't really say, as Edward's body was never found after he jumped into a river while escaping police. Forrest, who has been recently transferred here from Chicago, working in a very popular and prestigious radio channel which could on average get 10 million listeners. He hopes they get a large number of listeners tonight to warn them, just to be shocked that Scream radio station only gets about 35 listeners on average, but not shocking for a town that has a population of over 1,000 only. Soon after, someone by the name of Sandra Sharp calls just to be surprised a radio host is talking, as she dialed 911. He explains how they're getting help from Henderson, the closest police department, but that could be a while, and that he's here to help. Sandra explains someone dressed like the notorious Whistling Man is after her, holding a knife in his hand. Sandra working in a dance studio, being trapped there, Forrest walks her through hot wiring a parked car in the parking lot to get away. Next caller is Maurice, an old-timer who is a reporter who reported on Edward Mooney himself in the 1950s. He mentions how someone dressed as the Whistling Man broke in, thinking it's a teenager pranking him, as they tend to do this every year. Maurice also confirms the incident with Edward happened 30 years ago, with the current time period being 80s. As Maurice is hiding, the killer seems to be walking around in order to find him. Using the facts floor map of the building, Forrest directs Maurice while calling different sectors of the building to distract the killer. After some time, they manage to temporarily lock in the killer while Maurice takes his chance and runs away, being unharmed. While waiting for any other calls, Peggy and Forrest talk to each other in order to get to know each other better, as they've been working together for only a week. It turns out both Forrest and Peggy don't have any family, with Peggy only having one surviving sister whom she lost contact with before their father died. That's when all of a sudden someone rings the buzzer of the studio, which startles both Peggy and Forrest. As Forrest goes to check who it is, he only finds a tape left in front of the door with a note on it saying to play it on air. As they play the cassette, it's cut out words of Peggy and Forrest forming a paragraph that the people of Gallows Creek will suffer and get punished tonight, possibly by the killer.
Hello, Gallows Creek. Time to
Pay the
price. Time to
pay
for lies. Time to
sit there.
I will punish you. I'm going to enjoy this.
Unsurprisingly, Maurice calls soon after, mentioning how after checking the room the killer was trapped in with some of his buddies, noticing it's empty now, with the killer nowhere to be seen. It's a little bit strange as the building Maurice was in is very far from the radio studio, making it almost impossible for the killer managing to get from there to the studio and drop the cassette. Next caller is Dr. Virginia Sullivan, who mentions that she got a call from the Whistling Man taunting her. Terrified for her life, not being able to compose herself, she mentions how she could be at risk and promptly hangs up, not being able to take the pressure. Forrest does a wonderful investigative work, calling a pizza shop and pretending to be someone from the frat house in front of Virginia's house, asking the pizza shop to leave a note on saying to call the radio station, which leads to the order to be delivered for the frats calling in, which causes them calling, with Forrest asking the frats to go to Virginia's house and, as a result, saving her. Just as Virginia calls, being a little bit scared still, not knowing who's in front of her house, she mentions someone by the name of Clive, which gives Forrest a hint that someone called Clive might be involved in this somehow. Next caller is a teenager named Eugene, who at first seems to be stood up by his to-be sweetheart Molly, when instead, he gets a surprise visit by the menacing Whistling Man, who sets chase after him in a funfair maze, a place Eugene wanted to meet Molly an hour ago. Lucky for Eugene, who gets lost in the maze, Forrest conveniently finds the map for the maze left over behind by one of the co-workers of the radio station. Forrest guides Eugene through the maze before hanging up that he loves Molly, someone who seemingly didn't even want to show up. Next caller is Murphy, someone who called earlier and challenged the killer to get to him if he has the guts. Should we say, unlucky for Murphy, his wish comes true with the killer going to the place he is in, the Gallows Waste Disposal Plant. This time around, Murphy crying and asking for help as he has unsurprisingly become the next target of the killer.
This is Murphy!
Hello, Murphy. What have you got for us tonight?
Two things, Forrest. First, happy birthday to my son, Fernando. He's 3 today, and man, being his daddy has changed my life. I've learned how to live, how to laugh, and most importantly, how to love. And now, my other thing. I'm putting the word out to this so-called killer. You think you're tough, huh? Big man with a big knife, huh? Prove it. Come face me, a true warrior, at the Gallows Waste Disposal Plant. It's me again, Murphy. Oh, the killer got me, man. Why did I ever trust a guy named Master Robin?
After managing to help Murphy survive, they receive a call from Teddy Gallows Jr., who is running a campaign for becoming the mayor, who tries to cunningly promote himself, which after an unbearably long time, they cut off, which interestingly, it turns out he's even a sponsor for the radio, running ads.
I just want to say that my thoughts and prayers are with my Gallows Creek neighbors during this awful time. We need to be a town of law and order. We need cops who have the tools and funding they need to keep us safe.
Okay, Teddy.
I know you're an outsider to our little town here, Forrest. But you're really stepping up to bat for us all tonight. I just want to say thank you for taking a swing for Gallows Creek.
Jackass.
I just want to make sure our town is safe and prosperous. That's why the Gallows Family Factory, founded by my father, Theodore C. Gallows, God rest his soul, which employs over 200.
Teddy, unless you've got an emergency, I'm cutting you off.
You know what? I do have a problem. A problem that's ruining our town. You know what it is? The problem is that woman, our current mayor, Linda Cartwright.
Oh, here we go.
She just isn't one of us. Linda Cartwright is un-American, unstable, and...
You're not better than anyone, Teddy. Just because you inherited half the town.
Your producer sounds a little unstable too.
Don't you dare speak to me that way.
Cut him off, Peggy.
I can guarantee this kind of thing will not happen when I take office. The moral decay of...
And that's enough of Teddy Gallows Jr. for one lifetime.
The next caller is an actual emergency, a teenager called Carrie who alongside her friends is being hunted by the killer, with some of her friends already killed. It soon turns out to be the annoying prankster who called earlier, pretending to be the Whistling Man, Jimmy. As it turns out, it's the anniversary of the Whistling Man, making it a tradition in Gallows Creek, calling it Whistling Night, with many dressing up as him. Just as Jimmy is laughing for scaring Carrie and not taking this seriously, it turns out one of the people there who is having the Whistling Man mask is actually the Whistling Man himself, who kills Jimmy, even though Forrest told him repeatedly to go home. I guess he learned his lesson eventually. Coincidentally, it turns out one of the friends of the group called Jeannie worked in the station as an intern, which conveniently she left a note describing what her friends are good at. Forrest uses the note to tell Carrie how to split the responsibilities in order to escape the deranged killer in the old murder house, a place the friends met up in. After a complicated and tense short while, the teens manage to fight off the killer, with Carrie surviving, with the killer staring at her but sparing her and vanishing into the woods for mysterious reasons, even though that he could easily kill her. Next caller is someone who called before named Dawn, requesting a song called Long Ride Home. Unfortunately, Peggy threw the record outside after a fight with Brad, the food critic of the radio station, which Dawn persists on wanting it to be played. As Forrest refuses to play it as it's dangerous to leave with the killer on the loose, Dawn mentions she has an idea who the next victim will be, but she won't tell unless Forrest goes out and plays the record. Forrest clearly annoyed, as anyone would be in this situation, with Dawn being completely unreasonable but for some reason very strange, as if she is somehow connected to the killer. He finds the record outside but gets locked out. In order to find another way in, he tries going on through the janitorial room, where he finds a hidden room belonging to the janitor of the radio station named Clive, the same person a previous caller mysteriously talked about, Virginia. The hidden room has multiple pictures of strangers and a pinboard with newspaper cutouts and creepy mannequins. The newspaper cutouts all relate to a tragedy which was a festival Ferris wheel and an accident, leading to many life-changing injuries and deaths. Forrest quickly forms a theory that Clive is potentially the killer in question, the Whistling Man. with one of the strangers being the next victim. After some investigative work, Forrest pinpoints the next victim will be someone called Chuck Brody in the gas station, whom they call quickly and warn against the killer. Chuck at first dismisses this as a prank, but then suddenly starts shaking, saying how this is the year that he let his guards down, as if he was involved in something that led to Clive suffering in some way, leading to him wanting to punish the culprits and his perspective. By now, being confident the killer must be Clive, Forrest goes down to investigate the basement further when he finds a secret cassette tape by Clive. The tape talks about George Barrow, who drowned in 1968, which was originally thought to be an accident, something that happened about 20 years ago. An autopsy report indicates the strange circumstances surrounding this, that he had blisters on his feet as if he's been running for a long time non-stop, as if running from someone. It's also revealed from his hormones that he was heavily under stress just before death, with injuries sustained post-mortem, all indicating someone had chased down George, killed, and then disposed of him in the local reservoir. This autopsy report was never published, as a mysterious man stopped the doctor, who interestingly is Dr. Virginia Sullivan, the person who did mention under her breath that she did as Clive asked, which could lead to this mysterious man's voice being no other than Clive, who forced Virginia create a falsified report about how George died, drowning while being intoxicated at the young age of 18.
George Barrow, 1968. That's when this all began for me.
Time of autopsy is 7 a.m. Cause of death is asphyxiation from drowning. The degree of rigor mortis indicates that the subject has been deceased for 5 hours. That puts the time of death. Small lacerations to arms, legs, and face, typically obtained by running through foliage. Severe blistering to the feet, as though the deceased had been running without stopping. Preliminary toxicology results shows no signs of inebriation. However, a high amount of cortisol was found, indicating elevated levels of stress in the immediate moments before death. Additionally, there appears to be a post-mortem injury to the arm. It looks like it was trapped in a car door. It is the coroner's opinion that the subject likely feared for his life and was chased, resulting in a fall from a height into a body of water, where he hit his head, was knocked out, and drowned. Following that, he was moved.
Dr. Sullivan, we need to have a talk. Is that recording? Shut it off.
All findings leading to Clive being the killer. A secret tape recorded by Clive reveals he's not the killer, but someone who tried to prevent them, with this mysterious employer threatening him to never speak the truth, and that by now, if anyone finds this recording, means that he is dead.
If you're listening to this, then I'm probably dead.
What the?
I'm a man who likes to stay informed. I've got subscriptions to newspapers all over the country. A few weeks ago, I noticed headlines cropping up in those papers, one after the other. Each headline about a murder. Each murder, the death of someone I knew almost 20 years ago. And each one drawing closer to Gallows Creek. Drawing closer to the anniversary. None of us are innocent, but I don't think we deserve killing. All I hope now is that I can save some folk from the worst, and I can, I don't know, do something to make up for what I did back then, I guess. I didn't kill anyone, mind you. But that's past mattering. Now, there's more I could say that I should say, but my employer made it clear that my family would pay a high price if I ever spoke out. So, Hopefully I've said enough for you, listener, whoever the hell you are, to start putting the truth together.
What the hell? Peggy is not gonna believe this.
A note on the autopsy report by the coroner Virginia also has a sticky note reading that whoever made Virginia write this fake report is sorry, which could mean Clive was employed by someone dangerous who forced Clive to do his biddings, yet he didn't commit any murders. Forrest calls Virginia to find out what truly happened with her and Clive. When she mentions Clive was sent by his employer to make her falsify the autopsy report of George. In return, he promised his employer would pay for the treatment costs of Virginia's sister who has a chronic condition, and that if she wouldn't falsify it, he would beat her to death. Forrest subsequently called Sandra, the dance studio lady, who in fact was the one who found George's body in the reservoir. When pressed, she confesses that she saw the person who disposed of George's body in a river, in fact, and not the reservoir, but she kept quiet as she didn't want to lose her studio and quickly hangs up, not elaborating any further. After playing the requested music by Dawn, Long Ride Home, she calls after some time who this time around is the one being hunted. Using some of the documents Clive accumulated during his life to save people, Forrest manages to help Dawn, at least that's what he thinks, by giving her the access code to the skate rink. As she goes in, saying that she needs to be somewhere safe, it's revealed that she wanted to get there and kill the resident, Roller Ricky, someone who called earlier. But thanks to his dog, Maxie, he gets alerted and uses his gun to scare away Dawn, who turns out to be the killer. The Whistling Man, or more accurately, the Whistling Woman. Forrest makes a quick report live not to trust anyone, and someone by the name of Dawn will probably try to manipulate people to let her in and kill them. Next caller is Casey, who calls asking for help for her friend Jason, who has gotten stabbed. Casey and Jason were at the reservoir heading home when Jason hears someone whispering whom he seems to know. He suddenly gets stabbed and shouts at Casey to hide. It all seems as if Dawn, or the killer, commonly known as the Whistling Man, specifically targets people that she knows. Forrest calls the hospital, who gives them guidance on how to stop the bleeding and treat him in order to save him. Forrest then calls Casey, walking her through treating Jason. Not being able to get anyone to Jason as the last ambulance has blown up, and no car being available for Casey to drive Jason to the hospital, Forrest goes to the manager's office, Reggie, in order to see who in the station is trained enough to help Jason. After some digging, John Hedges, who lives close by to the reservoir, seems to have been a medic, being the most suitable person to go to the site and help Jason. After John gets to Casey, seemingly helping Jason to survive, the radio gets a call from Roller Ricky, who used to play football with George and Jason, all being friends before. He explains George had a girlfriend who loved each other very much. In a party which got cut short by a Whistling Man imposter breaking the party, scaring everyone, all the party goers run away, with George's body being found the next day. This party being about 20 years ago, they assumed this mysterious girl could have been Dawn, who maybe blamed the partygoers for George's death, hence why she hunted them down to punish them. They receive a call from Leslie, the 911 operator, who mentions they are on the way back to the town with a whole squad. Leslie asks Forrest to try and stall the Whistling Man in order to locate her so Leslie and the squad can get to her and apprehend her. Next caller is John Hedges, who delivers the good news that he managed to save Jason and they are en route to take him to the hospital to stabilize him. Talking directly to Jason, who is now awake, he explains what truly went down in the party which led to George's death. Jason, alongside his other senior friends, set up a prank in the Whistling Night to haze the newcomers. As they speak, Jason tries to say the name of the girlfriend starting with the letter M, when the lights suddenly go out, dropping the conversation. Peggy instructs Forrest to go down and find the generator in order to restore the power. As soon as Forrest turns on the generator, he starts hearing the Whistling Man, which worries him greatly, rushing to the studio to warn Peggy. That's when he sees the Whistling Man, who locks him in the producer room with no sign of Peggy, seemingly wanting to play a twisted game. That's when Dawn dresses as the Whistling Man and has an interview with Forrest. That's when she mentions that it's all because of Teddy Gallows, the candidate running for mayor whose father paid Clive to cover up George's death so Teddy won't be held reliable. But now, justice is being served, with Don being with Teddy, holding him captive, while the person dressed as the whistling man in the studio is no other than Don's son, Henry Barrow, revealing that George and Don were the sweethearts 20 years ago, which led to the tragedy of George dying in a prank gone wrong, when Don in fact got impregnated by George, having a son who both worked together to punish the people responsible for George's seeming accidental death. Therefore, there were two whistling men always. That's how they managed to get around the town so quickly and overpower so many victims. As she takes her mask off, Teddy recognizes her as Marie Campbell, who has been going around with the alias Don. Marie reveals that Teddy was the person responsible for killing George 20 years ago. Teddy explains what exactly happened in the first whistling night 20 years ago when the tradition began. Teddy orchestrated an intricate plan for the new guys, asking Jason and Roller Ricky to help him. He asked George to go up to the whistling point when he also brought his girlfriend, Marie. Marie, thinking Ricky was in on it too, gets the shock of her life that he was being pranked as well, which makes Marie question her own sense of morality and justice. But to justify it, she says that he kept his mouth shut after the incident and didn't tell others, as she wanted to kill everyone involved with the prank, and why she killed the pranksters in the old murder house, as she has picked up a dislike to any pranksters. This is why Marie left Jason to bleed as well, rather than finishing him off, as he played the role of an injured, bleeding victim in the prank 20 years ago, so she wanted to duplicate this scene for real. The person dressed as the whistling man that night was Chuck Brody, the person who Forrest saved at the gas station, who was extremely paranoid as if he felt being watched. Marie and George get separated, with Marie running to the bottom of the whistling point, but as she looks up, she sees another whistling man at the top of the cliff who was no other than Teddy, scaring George off the cliff, which leads to his fatal fall. Teddy's father, a powerful man in the Gallows Creek, pays the janitor Clive to falsify the autopsy report and make it seem like a drunk drowning incident in order to save his son's future, who wanted to run for mayor ever since teenagehood. The employer Clive talked about was no other than Teddy's father, who sent him to threaten Virginia, the coroner. He also threatened Sandra, the jazz lady, that the rent for her dance studio would go up and she would have a difficult life if she wouldn't lie about finding George in the river, as Teddy's father owned most of the town, including the land that the dance studio was on. Even Sheriff Matthews was in on it, falsifying the wrongful death of George, reducing him into a drunk who drowned rather than the evil Mr. Gallows, manipulating half the town to lie. That's why Marie didn't kill Martinez and only wanted to punish the ones who were responsible and collaborated with the evil, powerful Gallows. So it begs the question, was Marie right? Was it all justified that she tried to kill the people who tried to cover up the death of George? People who collaborated with Teddy's father, and especially the evil Teddy, who not only was the culprit and had no remorse whatsoever, he also let his father threaten and intimidate people, ruining their lives or even killing them if they would open their mouths. Maurice Russell, the reporter who also was a target tonight, refused to listen to Marie when she talked about how they fabricated the reason for George's death and in fact Teddy was the cause. That's why Marie wanted to kill him. Therefore, everyone Marie targeted had an involvement in the death of an innocent George. The story has even a bigger twist when it's revealed Peggy is the younger sister of Marie, who was lured to her hideout for a reunion in the school gym where she's holding Teddy captive. Marie explains how her parents never listened to her and threw her out, especially after learning she became pregnant with George. That makes sense when Peggy said her sister disappeared and left after their father died, which led to the mother marrying another man, but both eventually died as well. Trying to seek vengeance, Marie, not being able to kill her own parents as punishment, mentions she wants to settle for the next best thing, being her innocent sister Peggy, who had nothing to do with any of it and was in fact supportive, which makes it too far now that Marie is not just here and just driven by vengeance and resentment. This also makes sense why she wanted to kill Eugene Stein, the poor kid who got stood up as his parents were somehow involved, making a resentful Marie want to kill their innocent child. Forrest stalls Marie, finding a birthday card for Peggy given to her by Marie, which makes her realize she never forgot about her, which gives the police enough time to intercept her and stop her from killing Peggy, who only sustains a superficial cut. The police from Henderson rush to both the studio and school, chasing after both Henry and Marie Barrow, people dressed as the Whistling Man. It's not clear exactly who killed Clive, as he was hired by Gallows and wanted to expose them, but scared for his life. So it's a possibility he was killed by either Gallows or Marie. But by the looks of it, it's most likely Marie, as she was on the hunt already and was killing all the people responsible. In the cutscenes, police radio also reveals one suspect gets apprehended, seemingly Henry, and for Marie, in a poetic way, she loses her life by falling off the Whistling Point, where her sweetheart, George, fell and lost his life 20 years ago. However, just like Edward Mooney, the real Whistling Man, the police never finds the body of Marie, leaving it to the legend that she could come back every night to kill those responsible for her beloved's death. And that's about it for this video, folks. What are your thoughts and opinions about the game? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, you can stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Have a fantastic day.